Have you ever stopped to notice how many of your choices were made not out of desire, but out of fear? Not fear of failure, not fear of the unknown, but the quiet, haunting fear of being left behind. So, you became what they needed. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You agreed when everything in you said no. You shaped yourself into something likable, lovable, acceptable, just to stay close, just to not be abandoned. And maybe they stayed. Maybe they loved you, or the version of you that played it safe. But somewhere in the corners of your soul, a truth was buried. I was never really seen. You didn't live your life. You lived a version of yourself edited by fear. You kept the peace, but lost your voice. You were present, but not whole. You became excellent at reading the room, while forgetting how to read your own heart. The truth? You weren't trying to thrive. You were trying to be enough to not be left. It's an old wound, isn't it? Perhaps it started in childhood, a parent who left emotionally or physically. Perhaps it was the silent belief that love is earned, not given, that who you truly are might be too much, or worse, not enough. So you adapted. And in that adaptation, a quiet betrayal happened. You left yourself to make sure no one else would. But abandonment doesn't always look like doors slamming or people leaving. Sometimes it looks like staying, but never truly being there. And the most tragic kind of abandonment is self-abandonment. There's a mask we wear, shaped by performance and pretense. A mask that says, I'm fine, I can handle it, I'm okay. But behind it lives a fragile, weary truth. I'm exhausted from trying to be what they need. This is where the journey begins, not by blaming others, but by gently asking yourself, when did I start believing that who I am isn't enough? Because healing doesn't begin when others finally see you. It begins when you do. Where did it begin, this fear of being left? It's easy to think it started with a breakup, a betrayal, or a moment of rejection, but often it began long before we could even speak it. It began in the silent spaces of childhood, in the tone of a parent's voice, in the absence of touch, in the feeling that love had to be earned through silence, achievement, obedience. This fear didn't just appear, it was handed to you, like a fragile heirloom passed down through generations, unseen, unnamed, but deeply felt. Maybe your mother spent her life trying to be needed so she wouldn't be left. Maybe your father never said, I love you, not because he didn't, but because no one ever said it to him. You weren't born with this fear. It was absorbed, felt, imprinted into your nervous system like a quiet rule. If I'm not useful, I'll be abandoned. This isn't about blame, it's about truth. Because what we inherit emotionally, we often live unconsciously. The child becomes the adult who overgives, who stays in relationships that suffocate, who says yes when everything inside screams no, just to feel safe. You may think you're being loving, loyal, kind, but underneath that devotion, there's often desperation. The desperation of a child who once needed to be chosen and never stopped trying. This fear isn't logical, it's cellular. It lives in the body, in the breath, in the silence between words. It rises in the tension of your shoulders when someone pulls away. It hides in the panic when a text goes unanswered. It disguises itself in over-apologizing, over-explaining, over-performing. And worst of all, it convinces you that it's love. But love isn't fear. Love doesn't ask you to shrink, to chase, to abandon yourself. That's the inheritance talking. To break the cycle, you must dare to face it. To pause and ask, whose fear am I carrying? Who taught me that I had to earn love with self-erasure? And am I still living out their story instead of writing my own? Healing begins the moment we stop calling survival love and start reclaiming the right to be fully, imperfectly ourselves, even if that means someone walks away, even if we're left alone. Because the deepest abandonment is not being left. It's leaving ourselves to keep others close. You survived. Through the storms, through the silence, through the small betrayals of daily life that told you, don't be too much, don't need too much, don't feel too deeply. And so, you obeyed. You played it safe. You stayed where it was familiar, even when it was painful. But surviving is not the same as living. Living is messy, living is risky. Living requires you to show up, not just with a smile, but with your soul. And you've been hiding, even from yourself. You wake up each day, perform the duties, answer the messages, meet the expectations. But your spirit, it's been asleep. You've built a life of safety, carefully calculated and emotionally muted. Not because you don't want more, but because more feels dangerous when you've been taught that love can vanish. And so the goal became clear. Don't be abandoned. But at what cost? You stayed in jobs that drained you, just to feel useful. You kept friendships that no longer saw you, just to avoid loneliness. You silenced your needs just to keep peace. But peace built on silence is not peace. It's a prison. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself, if I just get it right, if I say the right things, do the right things, I'll be loved, I'll be safe. And so you edited your soul into something digestible. You traded truth for tolerance, aliveness for approval. But here's the quiet truth. You were never born to survive someone else's idea of who you should be. You were born to exist fully, even if that existence means walking away from everything that once kept you safe. There's a difference between security and soul. Security says, stay where you're accepted, even if you're unseen. Soul says, come alive, even if it means standing alone. Have you ever noticed how your life feels muted, like it's playing in black and white? That's what happens when we numb pain. We numb color too. We numb joy, passion, depth, intimacy. You didn't do this to hurt yourself. You did it to protect yourself. But now, maybe the cost has become too high. Maybe surviving isn't enough anymore. Maybe, just maybe, you're ready to exist. Not as someone pleasing, not as someone perfect, but as someone real. What would happen if you stopped trying to avoid being left and started trying to truly live? From the outside, your life might look complete. You've done what you were supposed to. You've stayed, smiled, succeeded. You've held it all together, the job, the relationships, the expectations. But inside, there's a silence that aches, a hollowness that no amount of praise, performance, or presence can fill. You wonder, why do I still feel so empty? This is the shadow, the silent part of the soul that we bury, not because we don't care, but because we were never taught how to listen. You see, when we live to avoid being left, we craft lives based on external approval. We build stories that make others stay, but forget to ask, does this life make me want to stay with myself? You might have love around you, but feel unseen. You might be surrounded by people, but feel utterly alone. You might have achieved success, but feel like a stranger in your own skin. Because the real hunger isn't for validation. It's for authentic connection. And that can't be found in roles you perform, only in truths you embody. You can't fill a soul-sized void with surface-level living. And yet, we try. We try with busyness, with perfection, with scrolling, drinking, working, pleasing, anything to avoid the terrifying stillness of that question. Is this really my life? Or just the version I created to feel safe? That emptiness is not your enemy. It's a messenger, a sacred signal that something essential has been lost or never fully claimed. It is your soul knocking, softly but urgently, asking to be remembered. This is the paradox. The more we abandon ourselves to keep others close, the more disconnected we feel, even in their presence. You can't keep betraying your truth and expect fulfillment. You can't keep wearing the mask and hope someone will see the real you. Fulfillment doesn't come from being chosen by others. It comes from choosing yourself, every day, especially when it feels risky. And yet so many of us continue on autopilot, telling ourselves we should be grateful, that we're being dramatic, that others have it worse. But comparison is not clarity, and guilt is not a guide. If your soul is whispering, if the silence is screaming, don't turn away, lean in. That emptiness, it's not a sign of failure. It's the beginning of awakening. Close your eyes just for a moment and imagine this. You are walking down a long corridor. It's dimly lit, quiet, lined with old wooden doors. Each one represents a chapter of your life. Moments you survived, identities you wore, people you tried to become. At the very end of the hallway, There's a door unlike the others. It's older, heavier. The paint is chipped, the handle worn from years of being touched, but never turned. You know this door. You've passed by it 1,000 times. But you've never opened it, because behind it lives the part of you you had to abandon to be accepted. Your real self, not the polished version, not the agreeable one, but the raw, unfiltered, soulful you. The one who once dreamed, felt deeply, and didn't apologize for existing. And now something inside you is stirring. A restlessness. A quiet revolt against the life lived in fear, in performance, in sacrifice. You place your hand on the doorknob, but your body tenses, because to open this door is to face the parts of you you've kept in exile, the anger you swallowed, the needs you silenced, the creativity you ignored, the love you denied yourself. It is terrifying, because you were taught that being your full self was dangerous, that it would lead to rejection, punishment, abandonment. So you locked that part away. You survived without it. But you also lost something sacred. And now, here you are, standing at the threshold. Do you open it? Because once you do, there's no turning back. You will begin to remember, to feel, to ache, but you will also begin to live. That locked room holds not only your pain, but your power, your voice, your vision, your wholeness. This is the place where you stopped negotiating your worth. This is where you meet yourself, not the version others preferred, but the truth that was always waiting. The real self does not scream. It waits, with patience, with dignity. And when you are finally ready, it welcomes you not with blame, but with open arms. Because no matter how long you've been gone, the soul remembers the way home. All you have to do is turn the key. What if your pain isn't a problem to fix, but a message to hear? We spend so much of our lives running, from sadness, from discomfort, from the ache that rises uninvited in the quiet hours of the night. We medicate it with distractions. We silence it with busyness. We spiritualize it, intellectualize it, minimize it. But what if it's sacred? What if that pain is your soul speaking, not to destroy you, but to awaken you? Pain in its purest form is not the enemy. It's the cry of something within you that has been ignored for too long. It is the rebellion of the real self, refusing to stay buried. That sharp grief you feel when you're alone, maybe that's your soul longing for authenticity. That anxiety that rises when you're around people who don't truly see you, maybe that's your soul begging for connection, not performance. That numbness that lingers, even when everything should be fine, maybe that's your soul mourning a life half-lived. We have been taught to fear our feelings, to label them as weakness, to suppress, avoid, escape. But the soul doesn't care about appearances. It cares about truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to be a hollow version of yourself, tolerated but unseen. You were meant to burn with the fire of your full humanity, joy, rage, sorrow, wonder, all of it. The soul doesn't want your perfection, it wants your presence. To sit with the ache instead of numbing it, to feel the grief without rushing through it, to hear the longing, not silence it with shame. What if your pain is not asking to be healed but honored? What if it's not there to break you but to open you? Because here's the paradox. The moment you stop running from your pain, it transforms. It becomes a guide, a teacher, a doorway. And behind that doorway is everything you thought you'd lost: self-trust, inner peace, purpose. The journey of individuation, of becoming whole, does not begin in light. It begins in the dark, with a whisper. There is more. You are more. Come back to yourself. And you don't have to do it all at once. You only have to stop turning away. Because the pain is not your punishment. It's your invitation to remember, to return, to rise. There comes a moment when survival is no longer enough. A moment when the soul whispers, then shouts, that the mask must come off, that the performance must end, that belonging bought through self-abandonment is not belonging at all. This is the moment of individuation. Not a concept but a lived truth. The radical act of becoming yourself, not the version the world prefers, not the one your family shaped, not the one your fear protected, but you, with your voice unfiltered. You, with your needs unapologetic. You, with your sacred contradictions, your beauty, your darkness, your light. Individuation is not easy. It is not soft. It will ask you to stand alone at times, to disappoint people you love, to walk away from roles that once made you feel safe. But what you gain is everything. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop begging to belong. You stop confusing validation with love. You become your own home, and that changes everything. Because once you belong to yourself, you no longer tolerate relationships that require your silence. You no longer shapeshift to fit into rooms you've outgrown. You no longer confuse peace with absence of conflict. You know real peace is presence of truth. Individuation is not isolation. It's liberation. It's the end of the performance, the end of shrinking, the end of asking, "Am I enough?" and the beginning of declaring, "I am." You stop searching outside for something only your soul can give, and you begin walking the path that was always yours to walk. It is a path of courage, of grief, of rebirth. And as you walk, the people meant to meet the real you, not the mask, will appear. Not many, but enough. Enough to remind you that authenticity attracts resonance, and that the life you feared would fall apart was never truly yours to begin with. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the fear taught you to forget. So now, the question is not, will they leave me if I'm real? The question is, will I leave myself just to be loved? And your answer is your freedom. So I ask you now, how many versions of yourself did you create just to not be left behind? How many dreams did you silence to keep others close? How long have you been living, but not truly existing? And if the only one you've truly abandoned is you, what would it look like to come back home? To choose yourself not out of defiance, but out of reverence. This video isn't just a message, it's a mirror. And if it reflected something forgotten, buried, or deeply felt within you, then maybe it's time. Time to stop running. Time to stop begging for love that costs you your soul. Time to listen, not to the noise around you, but to the truth within. Because healing isn't loud, it's a quiet return, a whisper that says, "I'm still here, I've always been." And if this message touched your heart, if it helped you see even a glimpse of your truth, you can support this channel with a super thanks. It helps us keep creating the kind of content that heals, not just entertains. Your presence here is already a gift, but your support, it helps light the path for others too. If you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe and stay with us for the next video appearing on your screen now. It's a continuation of this journey inward, because the world doesn't need more perfection, it needs more truth, more souls brave enough to come home.